So today I'm joined by Tipawan Middlebrooks, a really fabulous chick who has gone from the ATL to, what do you guys call California? The CA?
Yes, CA Cal, the West Coast.
Cali. And so we will get back to this West Coast lifestyle and how that has changed your view even as a mom, or maybe some of the things you've considered for just raising West Coast versus East Coast. But first, I want to get into a special day that's coming up for you, which is your birthday. And I know you're not huge on birthdays, but what I do want to ask is, how do you feel like your birthdays have changed, maybe now that your kids aren't babies, or the fact that you even have children now? Do you feel like your birthdays used to go a little bit differently than what they do now?
Most definitely. There is definitely a difference between how I view and celebrate my birthday as a almost 41-year-old woman
Whoop, whoop.
versus when I was younger.
Yes,
It's a definitely an evolution of celebrating your birthday, but it is definitely a difference.
it is a difference. What about your kids' differences as well? Because, for their birthdays, every year when it's your birthday, it's the son's birthday, pretty much. How does that
That
go
is
being a
true.
mom that shares a birthday month even is like sharing?
Ye- Yeah, I when I found out I was having my son very close to my birthday, they actually wanted me to have my C-section on my birthday.
Happy
And
birthday,
you're
C-section.
right. And a part of me was like, "Oh, that's great." But then I said, "You know what? I want him to have his own."
Mm. His own birthday then?
Yes, I wanted him to have his own, so that he could be celebrated, as an individual and not, grouped with
Mm.
his mom. So I definitely try to
Oh,
separate the two events. So there's mom's birthday that comes first on the 14th, and we celebrate that,
yes.
and then his comes, uh, do my best to make sure that he feels special on his day as well.
Oh, well, I think that that's sweet. I think that as moms, especially when they're younger and we're trying to plan these parties and things like that for them, those are special times because as they get a little bit older, then it becomes about spending it with their friends. Even with your daughter, I thought it was super cute what you did for her last birthday, getting her friends together. What type of restaurant or dinner did you guys go to?
We went to a restaurant. You basically cook your own food. They bring raw veggies and seasoned raw meats, and there's a grill in front of you, and there's some directions, of course, on how to grill everything and the timing. So her and her friends ordered a lot
Yeah.
of different varieties. They just cooked it all themselves right in front of us. It was amazing. I enjoyed it.
And so, speaking of meat and eating, you are a vegan. Is that okay with the world?
I am. Yes, it is okay to share.
Okay.
I've tried to stay away from the word vegan just because
Oh, okay.
I I I recently, did some more deep digging on, the
Okay.
culture,
Okay.
and I didn't want to disrespect the title because, I have some leather, pieces that I like,
Oh
and so
my
I'm not
gosh.
I'm not that strict of a vegan where I'm not going to wear leather. So it's more of an eating thing. So I'll call myself plant-based. So, I buy my plant-based foods, but then I also allow them to pick out things at the grocery store that they would want to prepare and make for themselves, even if it's not plant-based. So it has definitely grown and evolved. My husband is plant-based as well, so we kind of eat the same things, but the kids
Mm.
definitely have a separate menu.
Right, which is good. When you said your husband eats plant-based too, because when they're out the house and it's just the two of you guys, it sounds like you'll be on a one accord where you won't still be making extra meals. So that's a
Exactly.
really cool thing. Well, that's good that you guys are in alignment with the diet. So let's switch then, because we did mention in the last recording before we switch to this one about you residing in California. And I think there's this general consensus as well that people in California eat kind of differently anyways. Do you agree with that? Does it feel like a judgment to say something like that? Does that sound accurate?
It is accurate. And, coming out here was definitely a bit of a culture shock, just because I was exposed to so many different types of food when I came out here. I
Mm,
think when you're raised in the South, you're kind of a one lane type thing when it comes to food.
mm,
So the variety was definitely more abundant out here than it was, when I lived in Georgia, and especially transitioning from, eating meat and then not eating meat. It was definitely more, I needed the variety just so I could, eat well rounded meals. So being out here, I'm definitely exposed to other cultures with their foods. And I found that it was actually easier for me to be plant based when I moved out here.
of course. And, if it's also okay to say, you do or have had a family restaurant in your family. So even the type of foods that were available for like the family restaurant that you're familiar with, how much of that type of food do you still incorporate into today's diet?
Wow, that's a good question.
No more
It
gravy on the mashed
Yeah,
potato.
right. I think when I first transitioned from eating meat to being plant based, I still wanted those staple foods because that is just what I was used to. I wanted my macaroni and cheese, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have my candy yams, and just
Mm-hmm.
those cultural things that are like comfort foods. But what I try to do now is, of course, I can make those things plant based, but I just don't eat them as often as I used to, just because of the it is more
Yeah.
calories, more fat. But
Right.
there are times where you just want that, what we call soul food uh, diet
Soul
or
food
whatever.
fixins. Fixins.
Exactly, exactly, the fixing. So I definitely have a couple of spots out here that I go to when I need my
Okay.
soul food fix.
Okay, I hear you on that. It's funny. When I was growing up, I remember there was this boy um whose parents were vegan, and we kind of felt bad for him a little bit. I'm just being frank with you, because if we were like grilling something or cooking something, he was coming over with his plant-based hot dog, or whatever, to still participate in what we had going. The general thing was like, oh man, that poor kid, he has to eat, plant-based because his parents eat plant-based. Well, we called it vegetarian because at the time that's
Hmm.
all we knew was the word vegetarian. We didn't even really get vegan yet, quite yet.
Right.
And so it's good though that as a mom, your kids aren't out there with people going, oh man, you can't have it. At least they can say, I'm making the choice to where, I want to eat this chicken nugget instead of a chicken nugget. They can kind of
Right.
kind of make their own decisions. So speaking of them and that, and them being able to make their own choices and decisions, and you just kind of like setting out like, hey, this is what I do. How does that come when it comes to raising them? um I like to refer to our young men and women as young kings and queens, and of course trying to teach them a sense of responsibility, even if it takes a while. What do you think would be the balance between that king and queen aspect and like just spoiling, your
Mm.
kids? Just like, here, you want this? Here, have this. You want them to get the concept of abundance, I'm sure. You want them to get the concept of, there's more where that came from. But how do you balance that between them just, like I said, being spoiled?
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the word spoil because we were just having this conversation this morning.
Get out.
Because yes, my son wanted to do something
Hmm.
and he heard the word no. And it was almost like a response came over him like, what do you mean no? So
Hmm.
we were letting him know, like, listen, you're going to hear no sometimes. You can't get upset and rebuttal when you hear no, when you've heard 100 yeses, and we use the word spoiled because when you hear no and it makes you upset, it's like, okay, you're used to getting what you want all the time. And so now this one particular time, you're not getting what you want and it's a problem. So
Mm.
it is
Are you there? I heard you say it's definitely, and then I think I lost you.
Okay, it's definitely a lot of conversations that have to
Hmm.
be had with both of them individually and together.
Hmm.
Because although as a parent you want them to have everything, you have to show them that there are going to be times where you're not going to get what you want, but you can't have a meltdown and think that the world has wronged you because you've heard the word no. So that's
Yes.
very appropriate that you asked that because we just had that, conversation this morning. So
Wow.
yes, and as a parent, you sometimes you feel bad when you have to tell them no, but
Mm.
the 100 yeses that they have
Mhm.
gotten,
Yes. Yes,
those
Lord.
hold a lot of weight as well. So it is definitely an ongoing thing with both of them. But a king and a queen, I'm so thankful that I have one of each. I get to experience how
Mm.
to raise a son and a king, and I get to experience
Mm.
how to raise a daughter and a queen. And they
Mm.
are very different.
Mhm.
But what I try to do is focus on who they are individually. Like you love your children just so
Mhm.
much,
Mhm.
but you have to have different relationships with them because they're two completely different people.
Mm.
And so you just, spending time with them, listening to them, you kind of know, who they are. So you just kind of have to meet them where they are. They're boy and girl, but they have completely different personalities, needs, and wants and preferences. So it's an
Right,
ongoing
right.
thing.
And so, how far are they in age? I'm sure people want to know as they're listening, and we're saying young king and queen.
Yes, my son is 14. He's about to be 15. And my daughter is 16. She'll be 17 in December.
Whoop whoop, December.
Yes,
So,
yes.
as we say, even those differences, even though that's only a few years apart, do you find that because, those years are actually separated even by schools? So, whereas one's starting high school or one's in high school, one's still in middle school, does that make a difference? Um, as far as age and what you allow, is it kind of like I let your sister start doing this at this age? This is the age you're going to be able to start doing this. Or is it different because it's a boy, which does
Hmm.
happen with our boys. I've noticed sometimes we say, hey, well, he's a boy, so he could do that a little
Hmm.
bit sooner. Or you're a girl, so you're going to have to
Hmm.
wait. Do you find yourself kind of having those types of moments?
Oh, most definitely. And I have a daughter that is very much a activist and a feminist. So she will definitely call me out and say, "Hey, I should be able to do this as well.
Mm,
Even if my brother gets to do it, I should be able to do it, and it shouldn't be a difference because he's a male and I'm a female."
mm,
And as you evolve as a parent, you really try not to necessarily do everything that you were brought up doing because it doesn't
mm-hmm.
mean it was right. It just means that's what you're familiar with.
Familiar, right?
Yes. So when you get checked as a parent, you really have to kind of think about, okay, am I treating them like this, or do I have
Right.
these rules just because that's the way I was raised? Or is it time to, have a new way of thinking? Because
Mm-hmm.
these are different people. This is not
Mm-hmm.
me. This is Justice. This is Samaria. Those are my
Mm-hmm.
children. So I have to treat them as different individuals. So my son is starting high school and my daughter's already in high school, but
Mm-hmm.
they have different levels of maturity. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think as a parent, you have to just be able to recognize, is this child right here mature enough to be doing this? And have they shown me that they are mature enough to do this? And then we set the rules based off that. It's not how old you are, if you're a male, if you're a female. It's
Mm-hmm.
what is your maturity level and what type of behavior have you shown that you're able to do these things, or that we can trust you to do these things. So I try to go based than boy girl.
Mm. It makes a lot of sense, actually. I'm so glad that you said that. And as I continue to explore this mom space segment on the Peaceful Warrior podcast, I think I'll have a lot more of that come up. And so it'll be very interesting to see those differences between age of children, gender of children, or like as you say, how much do they push for what they even want as a part of their personality? Are they pushing for those things that they want? Are they kind of, like you said, kind of checking you like, hey, this ain't the 80s no more, things are different now, mom. It's definitely takes some adjusting to. So I'm glad we're able to talk about these things and shed some light, and hopefully there'll be some other moms that are listening in that can kind of relate to these various things that we've talked about. And so I'm really grateful that you're able to join me today. And I have a question that I want to ask all moms as I move forward on this. And so I'm going to put it to you first. You'll be the first one to answer. So when you hear ask and ye shall receive, what does that mean for you or to you?
Hmm. It means that for me, it means giving a voice to those desires and wants that I have, and being able to express them outwardly, whether it be to I'm saying this to God, hey God, this is
Mm-hmm.
what I want, this is my desire, and then knowing and trusting that God is going to make sure that I receive that. And then also to the people around me, sometimes we want things from people, but we haven't expressed what we want, and we want them to read our minds. And so, me asking, hey, this is what I want, and then receiving that is definitely, something that I've started to practice more, and not just wanting people to read my mind. So, asking you shall receive, give a voice to what you want in any situation so that you can receive it and you not feel like it came back void because you never said anything.
Wow. Powerful ending words. Your word returning void. Wow. So I'll leave everybody with that one to wrap this episode up. Thank you again, Tipawan Middlebrooks, for joining me. I'm going
Thank
to
you for
wish you
having
a
me.
fabulous weekend. You are so very welcome. And I this one up and listen to what we just talked about.